Thank you very much. It's great to see you all. As Mano said, my name is Chris Watson. I'm with KVH Industries. It's a pleasure to be back here at CSN ICT. I spoke 2 years ago, and it was a great experience. So I'm very happy to be back. I have the unenviable start or task of starting off the cybersecurity, the scary part of the afternoon. But actually, I'm going to talk more about sort of attitudes towards cybersecurity and IT. Because as we all know, resources are limited. How do we get the most out of these? How do we make sure that our vessels and our systems are organized? And how do we make sure that our IT teams are also able to deliver on the other elements that are needed? So as we all know, maritime industry is a challenging environment. Our biggest, most expensive, most valuable assets are tens or hundreds or thousands of miles offshore. They don't have IT staff on board, but they need to be connected. They need to be treated like remote offices, and the systems and services that are on board need to be up and running 24/7. There is really no room for downtime. And at the same time, all of these features, all of these systems are being managed in a challenging hybrid environment where you have both IT, you also have operational technology, OT, you have new and emerging technology like AI, IoT, other things like that, along with traditional systems. And how do you blend all of that? And how do you control all of that? Another thing that's driving this is the demand for data and that connectivity. We are seeing smart ships and smart ports with automation, with AI, with IoT. Everything has sensors. Everything's generating data. You also have your sustainability technologies. If you want your green technologies to work, you need the data to understand how to make sure that they are operating in an optimal environment. How are you getting the most out of them? And the other thing is that as we've seen here on shore, more and more of what we do is moving into the cloud. It's no longer just residing on your laptop. Microsoft Teams is out there in the cloud. You're transmitting information back and forth, and vessels are increasingly needing that cloud access. How do you provide that, and how do you make sure that it's secure? And that gets to the cyber resilience and cybersecurity. You need to be looking at all of these elements. How is it going to work? How are you going to keep it secure? If something happens, how are you going to respond, and how are you going to recover? And at the heart of all of this is the connectivity that's changing. 2 years ago when I was here, things were very different. Starlink has completely disrupted the world as we know it when it comes to satellite communications at sea. And we now have new services like OneWeb and Amazon Kuiper that are either here or on the verge of being here. And they are changing how we communicate, because all of a sudden, we don't have to worry quite so much about how do we not use data on board ships, but how do we take advantage of all the data that we can get on and off the ships. And that brings a lot of benefits with things like video chat, IoT sensor data, that cloud access. But we also have to remember that every time we add a function like that, it also increases the potential for risk when it comes to cybersecurity. Every new connection that you add is a potential new vector for cybersecurity risks to get on board the ship. But it's very interesting, as all of this is happening. For example, in the United States, the U.S. Coast Guard has just rolled out new regulations that are going to be fully implemented in the next 18 months. And talking with a lot of fleets who have never really had to deal with this before, we've been hearing a lot of sort of ways that they can work around it. They don't necessarily want to invest. They don't know if they really need to do it. But workarounds really don't work. One of the things that we've heard is, my fleet's too small. I'm not going to get hacked. I don't hear about fleets like me getting hacked or in the news because of cyber. But the thing is that the answer to that is, you might be too small to make it to the news, but everybody has the potential to get hacked. Those attacks are happening. It's an immutable law of the universe now that everyone is a potential target. And how are you going to prepare for that? Okay. The next thing is, I don't, money's tight. I don't have a whole lot in the way of operating expenditures right now. I don't have a lot to spend. So I'm just going to be, I got firewall and I've got endpoint protection, and that's going to be fine. that'll do. I don't need anything else. Well, firewalls and endpoint protection are valuable parts of a cybersecurity solution, but they aren't the end all and be all. And that's because cyber is constantly evolving. So it doesn't matter that you were able to block attack today. What about the next attack tomorrow as it changes, as it learns how you are trying to be secure? You need a solution that's going to be able to evolve with it. And then the next thing is the idea of what else do you need your IT team doing? You know, if you've got an IT team of 3 or 4, small fleet, you've got to be dealing with cybersecurity, but you also have to deal with your day-to-day work. You know, how do you manage with software patches and the laptop that needs to get configured and sent to Hong Kong because the master's laptop crapped out on the way? Okay. And also, what about the strategic things that your business needs to be doing to grow? How do you balance all of that? And it's critical to balance it because if you let it slip, for example, and you don't invest in that cybersecurity, you are at serious risk. First off, there's regulatory issues. If you don't comply, you can get fined. The US Coast Guard has said that in 18 months, when cybersecurity plans and audits are required, if you can't show that you have it, they will stop your vessel from leaving port. Okay? You've also got your business operations. What happens if your inventory management system, your ERP gets blocked out? Or even just on a really personal level, what happens if you're locked out of your payroll and you can't pay your people for 3 or 4 weeks? What is the impact of that? And then there's the issue of customer trust and reputation. Are customers going to want to do business with you if they feel that you have been insufficiently diligent about protecting their data, protecting their inventory, protecting their business? Are they going to want to work with you if they feel like you haven't taken care of that? And then there's the threat to crew safety and vessel safety. If your navigation gets locked out, if GPS gets spoofed, if Ectus gets, hacked, what are you going to do then? How are you going to keep your people and your vessels safe? Then you've got inefficient operations. If your IT department is focused on one thing, they're not able to focus on other things as well. How do you manage to do that so that your business can continue to thrive? And then inefficient applications. A lot of what was talked about this morning in terms of implementing AI and these other systems is an investment. How are you going to get the most out of your investment as you are working on all these systems? And that's part of what's driving all of the regulations that we're seeing. It's an alphabet soup. There's IMO, there's IMO, IX, ISO, US Coast Guard, all of these new regulations, and they're intended to provide guidelines because a threat to one vessel is a threat to all vessels because everything is networked now. But how are you going to respond to this? Because it's not just a one-time deal. There's a reason that the IMO regulations, the 6 key elements, are often presented in this circle, where you start off with governing. How are you going to establish a plan? What are your processes going to be? How are you going to identify all of the assets that are on board a ship that are potential to be threatened? How are you then going to protect them? How are you going to detect suspicious activity or attacks? How are you going to respond to that malicious activity? And then how are you going to recover? And part of the recovery is to look at your plans and where you can then improve them, because then you have to do it all over again. Cybersecurity compliance is not about passing the audit today. Cybersecurity compliance is about what do you do tomorrow? And are you going to be ready a week from now? Are you going to be ready a month from now? It is a constant effort. But then you have this challenge of an IT department that is being pulled in many different directions. Do you want them managing your daily IT infrastructure? All those passwords that need to get reset, the Wi-Fi access points that have to be configured and shipped to vessels, the laptops, the new account apps, accounts that have to be set up. Do you want them complying and helping comply with an increasingly complex regulatory environment? Do you want them working to help with the sustainable and strategic growth of your company? AI should be a huge resource for you as you're looking at growing. How do you take full advantage of these new tools? And then how do you want them dealing with cybersecurity? because you want them dealing with all of these things. But IT is a finite resource. And that's where this idea of working smarter comes in. What tools are available to help your IT department? What resources are available to help your company address all of these different needs? So one idea is tools that will help with automation and assessment. So these tools are looking at monitoring, reporting, remediation as you are pursuing cybersecurity and as you are looking at maintaining a strong cybersecurity profile going forward. And the nice thing is that these tools integrate with your entire tech stack, because your entire tech stack, all of the applications that you have, all of the servers, all of the hardware that you have, are all vital elements in your overarching cybersecurity approach. And this needs to be scalable, needs to be intelligent, it needs to be real time. So you can have monitoring so that you can be able to rapidly respond to requests for audits and have the evidence and compliance easily available and take out a lot of the manual process. That's part of this efficiency, is how can you take away some of the manual steps? How can you use things like AI-powered recommendations and then do all of this with the human in the loop, that human oversight? So at KVH, we're working with a number of different companies in the US that are dealing with cybersecurity really for the first time. And they're facing this issue with the United States Coast Guard and trying to understand how to do it. The US Coast Guard regs have 90 different control points that you have to address in cybersecurity, which looks like a big amount. But what we're able to do is we are using tools that allow us to create custom templates that break down all those requirements into common areas. And we can do this with any regulation that's out there, that then allows us to help customers track, control, and maintain their compliance by seeing where they stand, where are, what's in the green, what have they completed, what are they working on, what haven't they started yet. But it provides real-time status. So you're able to then drill down into these individual segments and look at common requirements, and again, get that visual look that's constantly being updated by your teams, by your systems as to where things stand. And then drill in even farther into those individual requirements and have your audit evidence right there. You don't have to build a manual audit report now when you are looking to respond to a regulatory body. Instead, it can be generated real time. You take the manual steps out. And then you're able to bring in all of your other tech stack elements. So bring in the other applications that you're using so they become part of the visibility that you have into your overarching cybersecurity. And when you do this, first off, you're going to reduce risk because it's going to help you become compliant faster and remain compliant. It's going to help you become more efficient. Anytime you can remove manual steps, it will always help speed things up. It allows your IT team to focus on other things. It's going to give you audit confidence, again, because of those reports that are being generated, the evidence that's contained within the systems. It's scalable. You can add new vessels. You can add new hardware. You can add new applications. You can add new regulations that you have to address, and they can speak among each other. So a compliance area for the U.S. Coast Guard that matches something in IMO, it can carry over. It speeds things up, and it's all done with human oversight. And part of the element of that human oversight is understanding, what does your IT team really need to be doing? Where do you need them to focus? Because there are a lot of day-to-day things, this grunt work. I forgot my password. We need to configure a Wi-Fi access point. We need to fix somebody's laptop. We need to update and patch a server. Your IT team can do that, but is that really where you want them spending their time? Is there something higher value that's going to help your company grow? And that's where we're seeing an increased trend in managed IT support. This is not a replacement for IT. So everyone who's in the IT department in this room, I am not advocating for the replacement of your job. What I'm advocating for is a team that can supplement what you are doing, that can complement what you are doing, that can take some of that grunt work off of your table and deal with that so that you can focus on what are the big strategic things. How can you implement new technology that's going to help? Let somebody else who has expertise in cybersecurity do that for you. Let somebody else help manage all of those access, the assets that you have, or to do the 24/7 monitoring and reporting, and do the patching, all this other stuff. It's all with the idea of enabling your IT team to focus on the strategic needs of your company and be able to help you grow. So for some final thoughts on this, cybersecurity is vital. I don't think there's anybody in the room who would argue that it's not, but because the risks of inefficient or ineffective cybersecurity are just too high to your business, to your customers, to your vessels, to your crew, and to your reputation. But you have to remember that compliance is not a one-time thing. It's not what did you do for me yesterday. It's what are you doing for me later on this week and in the months to come to ensure that we remain compliant. And then looking at how to become more efficient by taking advantage of tools that can help automate, that can bring AI into it to help generate action lists for the next steps that you need to take, and to be able to assess where you stand and then get the support that you need, because the goal of all of this is to protect your business and to allow your business to thrive and grow in the future. Thanks.